Everyone in the room laughed when the CIO pointed at the janitor's shy teenage daughter and said, "If you can fix this engine, I will give you a scholarship." They expected her to panic. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves and walked forward. What happened next left every engineer speechless, but hidden beneath the gray-seamed wires was a buried family secret, one that would shake the entire company and expose a truth no one was ready for. CEOs. Not ordinary, she was unstoppable. Before we start, like this and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. Now let's begin. The engine room buzzed with tension inside corporate headquarters of Stratton Dynamics, a powerful automotive tech giant in Detroit. The atmosphere felt more like a press event than a board meeting. The air smelled of oil, ambition and arrogance. Engineers in sleek suits whispered, trying not to laugh. At the center of it all stood a 12-cylinder pipe engine that had baffled the entire research division. It was their next big thing, a multi-million-dollar innovation meant to change the industry, but it had suddenly failed. Diagnostics revealed nothing. Nobody could get it to start. CEO Marshall Greystone, a tall man with slick silver hair and a voice that commanded every room, stood with arms crossed, scanning the circle of staff with clear disappointment. Then he glanced at the janitor. Henry Whitaker stood in the corner, quietly mopping floor. Henry looked down, trying to avoid attention, but that only triggered something in the CEO. With a smug smile, Marshall turned to the room. "Maybe Wes Hold ask Henry's daughter," he said, pointing to a teenage girl standing near the exit holding a worn backpack. Her name was Whitaker. She had come to visit her father after school, her bag stuffed with textbooks, engine diagrams, and a worn-out notebook held together with tape. She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. Marshall chuckled. "Go on, kid. If you can fix it, I might just fund your college." Everyone laughed, but Ara did not laugh. She looked at her father. Henry tried to shake his head slightly, but she stepped forward, her eyes weircome, but her voice shook slightly as she asked, "Can I touch it?" "Go ahead," Marshall smirked. "Be my guest." Phones were out. Some of the engineers began courting, expecting a moment of embarrassment. They could share over drinks later, but as Sarah stepped closer to the engine, something strange happened. At her hands stopped trembling. She dropped a door backpack to the floor with a soft thud. Then she opened it and pulled out their notebook. She flipped to a page filled with complex diagrams and noticed that made even a few of the engineers blink in confusion. Where did she get it? One whispered, "That is the same design we developed 6 months ago." Anatha murmured. She studied the engine for a full minute, then she got to work. Her fingers moved like they had done this 100 times before. She loosened a casing, removed a panel, checked a tin overlooked capacitor buried deep in the control housing, and replaced it with a component from her own bag. She carries components. Someone muttered, "That is not just some janitor's daughter." Anna thwarted eyes narrowing. Ara stepped back. "It now," she said quietly. The lead still half smirking, pressed the ignition button. The engine roared to life perfectly, smoothly, flawlessly. The room fell silent. Marshall's face turned pale, but no one noticed. Hands shaking gagging this time from something deeper than nerves. The secret she had buried was rising fast, and there would be no way to hide it much longer. Silence collapsed over the room. Like a wave, the engine's hum echoed through the cold steel walls, and no one dared to speak for a full 10 seconds. The sound of Stratton Dynamics' most advanced power unit running flawlessly after weeks of failure filled the space with disbelief. Ara stepped back, wiping grease from her fingers with the sleeve of her hoodie. Her hands were still shaking, but not from nerves. She had just a door to something she had tried her whole life to keep hidden. CEO Marshall Greystone stared at the engine. A hiss, jaw clenched so tight that his temples pulsed. He did not look at not yet. He was trying to process what just happened. The girl he had mocked had just solved what his best engineers could not. She had done it in under 2 minutes. A slow clap started in the back from a young technician who had tears in high sighs. Then another followed, but it was not applause of celebration. It was Avon and fear all tangled together. Marshall raised a hand, stopping the clapping. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice more cautious. Now Ara did not answer immediately. She looked at her father Henry, who stood frozen, mop still in hand, eyes wide with fear and something else. Pain. She looked back at the CEO. "I am just someone who loves engines," she said. Few engineers stepped forward, eager to speak. One of them, a woman named Donisk, That design in your notebook, how asterisk did. You get that that was a confidential. Ara hesitated. Her voice dropped. Drew at laughter. Broke out again, this time, nervous, uneven, almost desperate. You expect us to believe that you reverse engineered a prototype that cost $4 million to develop? Another man asked. I did not reverse engineer it. Airy opening her notebook again and showing Janitor page. I designed it. This one s better. Marshall's face turned red. Hessenetched the notebook and flip it through. The page's equations, electrical chemics, fluid dynamics models page, Zend pages of intricate original engineering work, annotated in blue ink with dates. Going back 3 years, you designed this engine. When you were 13, he sked, his voice low. I never said I designed that engine, Arcted. I said I designed. Mine, yours copied it. A loud gasp rippled through the room. Henry stepped forward, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. We should go, he whispered. No, Marshall said sharply. You are not leaving. Ara looked him inth. Are you detaining us? Marshall stepped back, realizing the ego battled with his instincts. Of course not, but we need to talk. Henry's voice trembled. No, you need to listen. Marshall froze. Years ago, Henry Beganther was a woman who worked here, a genius. She was my wife Ara's mother. Her name was Marin Whitaker. Marshall's eyes widened. She designed the first version off this engine long before your team took credit for it, Henry said, and when she found out they were stealing her work, she tried to expose them. The next week she disappeared in a lab accident. Boot. I never believed that story. I took the only thing left of her, our daughter, and ran the engine's hum, continued Beautive. Everything else in the room was dead silent. A pin could have dropped in that room and echoed like thunder. Every breath hung heavy in the air, every heart by it. Deafening, Ilara stood beside her father. Her hands balled into fisture, voice had not trembled, her eyes had not flinched. But inside her chest, a storm raged, a mix of anger, fear, and long-buried sorrow that had finally cracked it through. The surface. Marshall Greystone starred as if he had seen a ghost. Theme name Marin Whitaker had not passed it through anyone's lips in nearly 15 years net, because she was forgotten but back, as everyone had been told to forget. Official story was sealed, the files were classified, the accident had been off, the body never recovered. But what haunted Marshall more than anything was not just that mother had once worked at Stratton Dynamics, it was that she had been better than everyone else. There's martyr, faster, dangerous. Donna, then Ignir, stepped closer to Ara and spoke quietly. You are her daughter. Ara nodded once. Another voice whispered from the back. I remember her. She taught Onoff my first training seminars. She could design propulsion systems in her head like she was playing music. Marshall's grip on the notebook tightened. His voice returned, edged with disbelief. In something more bitter. Why come back? No, we expose this here, Ara. Step it forward. I never planned to. I did know Tevin want to be here. You made it a joke, you asked me to fix something your engineers could not, so I did, but now thought I am standing here. I will not walk away from the truth again. Henry Placetis, hand on her shoulder, but gently moved it aside. You see, I used to think silence protected people, she continued, but silence is what let her die, and if there is even one person in this room well remembers her, who wondered what really happened then. I need them to herit. A senior engineer named Leonard with gray in his beard and guilt in his eye slowly raised his hand. I was here when it happened. I saw the files get pulled. I saw her research rerouted. I never spoke up. And you were not the only one, Henry said sharply. I cleaned the labs. I heard the whispers. I saw the locked rooms. The engineers who panicked when her name was mentioned, they buried Erbat. They did not bury her mind. They did not bury her blood. They did not bury this. He motioned toward Marshall's expressions twisted as the walls around him began to crack. Not the physical ones, but the illusion of control he had spent years constructing. Do you think this changes anything? He snapped. Do you? A name and a few blueprints. Makoa, someone important. Ara smiled. It was not the smile of a child seeking approval. It was the calm smile of Samayan, who knew they had already won. You know what makes someone important. She said the truth. And right now, everyone in this room knows it. Even youth's silence that followed was different. Time, not stunned, not awkward, it was. The silence of awakening. Suddenly Dana took off her Stratton badge and put it onto the floor. Leonard followed, then another, and another. Marshall's eyes darted around, trying to find control again. This is not your companion anymore. Henry said it. Never lose. Marshall laughed bitterly, but it sounded hollow. Do you think they will believe you? Do you think any of this will stick? Era opened her phone and held up a video recording the entire moment from Themament. Marshall had mocked her. Audio-video confession. It already has. Shu whispered. The clip went viral before Thiessen had even risen. The next morning it started as a whisper on a local tech forum, then exploded across every platform like a tidal wave. Tearing through steel, Era's voice, calm and steady, resonated with millions. Her fascia, perfect storm of pain and power, wrapped on screens in homes, cafes, offices, and universities. People replayed the moments, said the truth mattered. There played the moment. Marshall Greystone was exposed. They replayed the followed, and they listened. By noon, Stratton Dynamics was trending in every state, not for a new defense contract, not for a rocket launch, but for a cover-up. World suddenly wanted to know who Marin Whitaker was and why no one had heard her name until now. A digital army dug through archives, uncovering old patent filings with her initials, half-redacted memos, and suspicious project closures, and right in the middle of a stud. No longer just a girl with Aviolin, no longer just a shadow she had. The storm inside the headquarters churned like a machine overheating. Marshall had barricaded himself in his top-floor office, flanked by lawyers and PR advisors. They urged him to issue a statement. They begged him to acknowledge truth, or at least pretend to care, but Marshall refused. Pride was a poisoned. He had drunk deeply in the lobby. The employees gathered around monitors. Some watched with disbelief, others with hopia, few with shame. Leonard stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, clutching his badge, now useless. Dana typed furiously in her laptop, uploading internal Felesto. Investigative journalists. Every piece of evidence was another crack in Thempire. Henry and Ara sat side by side in the old break room. Neither spoke at first, just the hum of a vending machine and the distant sound of news anchors discussing their lives as if it were MOV. I never thought it would actual like him to this. Henry finally said, I didn't think it would either, Arid. I just wanted to play the violin that day. Butu? Know what I realized? Standing in thought room, Henry looked at her. I was never just my mother's daughter. I wash her voice, and someone had to speak for her. He nodded slowly, emotion rising in his throat. Suddenly a knock echoed down the hallway. It was firm, sharp, almost ceremonial. A group of federal agents stepped into the main atrium wearing navy jackets with gold lettering. They did not say a word to the staff. They went straight to the elevator. No one tried to stop them. The entire company in stunned silence as the doors closed behind them, rising to the executive floor. 20 minutes later, Marshall Greystone was let out, in handcuffs. The moment his face appeared on every screen across the building, a spontaneous cheer erupted. Some cried, but most simply stood in awe. The man who ruled through silence had been silenced outside. Cameras flashed as Marshall was placed into a black SUV. Journalists shouted questions, but Ara did not speak to them. She stood in the front steps with Henry, watching the gates close behind the man. Woth, he owned everything. You should see something, Henry whispered. They are waiting. Ara took a breath and stepped forward. My mother gave her life to build something beautiful. She said others tried to bury it, but truth cannot stay buried forever. It rises, even if it takes years, even if it takes her daughter. And in that moment, it was not about revenge. It was about something far more powerful. Justice. Era stood outside Stratton Dynamics building as if the world itself had shifted beneath her feet. The sun glared overhead, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Weary employees and reporters had gathered Butivin in the chaos. There was a strange, almost sacred stillness around her. It was the kind of silence that followed storms, not empty but filled with awe. Yet inside her a different storm brewed. A limousine rolled up to the curb. Its windows were tinted darker than obsidian. The crowd instinctively parted. No one knew who was inside, but something about the vehicle demanded respect. The driver stepped out, tall and suited, then opened the rear door. Out stepped a woman. She was tall in a sleek emerald coat that shimmered in the light. Her hair was silver, but her posture was iron. Her eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Era and softened it. Was Olivia Whitaker, mother, the matriarch, who had spent years in silence, grieving the loss of a daughter and believing justice would never come. Era, she said, her voice trembling. Era turned for a moment. Thorold fell away. They had never met before. Only letters, only shared by others, but in that instant, blood, recognized blood. I kept of everything. Olivia whispered, tears rising. Every article, every photographer and note your mother wrote, I was waiting for this day even if. I never believed it would come. Era took her hand and felt decades of pain flow between their fingers, like current. For the first time she was not standing alone. She was standing with legacy behind them. A man stepped forward. He wore a crisp suit, though his demeanor was more humble. Than corporate, he introduced himself as Calvin Rohr, the acting head of the Department of Ethics, a new division created in the wake of the Stratton scandal. He offered a folder. What is this? She asked. Justice. Hesed. An opportunity. Inside was a letter signed by multiple senators. It stated that a new initiative would be launched, the Whitaker Program, a federal project, to fund, support, and protect young inventors from marginalized committee in the opening of a national research center, the top name on the advisory board. For Whitaker, tears filled her eyes, not because of the offer but because of what it meant. Her mother's work would not vanish. It would not rot in the hands of thieves. It would rise. That night Alara stood on a quiet stage inside a small community center, near the same hotel where it had Albagon children sat with wide eyes, as Shell lifted her violin. The lights dimmed and a hush fell. Then came the first note. It was soft, fragile, but within seconds it grew rich and soaring, filling every corner of the room. It was not just music, it was memory, it was truth, it was every step. Her mother had taken every injustice, every victory, every tear, and win. She finished. No one clapped, they simply sat in silence, breathless. Transferred outside, a billboard lit up above the city skyline. It showed a single image, a mother and daughter standing side by side.